Maps Chapters of Region 3. Today we're going to launch our interview series with a very special guest who I will introduce in just a second. But like we said before, we're going to be interviewing physicians and health professional students who are from a plethora of backgrounds. I'm sorry, my dog wants to say hey. From a plethora of backgrounds, whether it be medicine, dentistry, we've got PAs lined up, NPs, the whole nine. So we're going to start off with our MD, who just so happens to be the previous Region 3 Regional Director, Sasha Ray. She is in her first year of residency in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'll let you tell the people about yourself, Sasha.
Oh, I gotta introduce. Okay, that's like you never know what to say about yourself. No, hi Region 3. As Denisha said, I'm the former Region 3 director. I was Region 3 director from 2017 to 2019. Yeah. And I'm from Little Rock, Arkansas. I went to medical school in Arkansas, and I don't know. Even though I'm right now, I'm in Region 4. My heart is always with Region 3.
Always and forever. I mean, anywho, she didn't have to say all that about Region 4, but it's okay. We still love you. So I have 5 questions for you, and just want to hear a little bit about your story. So whatever comes to mind, just let us know. All right? So the first question is, what was the transition like for you from college to post-bac, or your professional school, so medical school in your case? How was that transition?
Well, I did do a post-bac as well. I think every level requires that you kind of do a little bit more, give a little bit more, and I think just kind of the understanding of that process is really, really helpful, especially when you get into residency, when you actually make it there, you understand why kind of building those skills are really important. Mm-hmm. But overall, I think the process was, it did more for me probably internally, just because, we're always wanting to be the best. We want to do things well. We want to do things correct. We want to do things right the first time, and really kind of remembering that this is a journey, this is a marathon, and understanding that it takes time to build those skills, and every level is going to require a different and better version of yourself, in order to kind of make it to the next one, and just kind of giving yourself grace throughout that process. So I would say the transition for me was one really of a lot of internal reflection and a lot of giving myself grace. Obviously, you're going to have to work hard. You're going to have to be more resourceful. I think all of that is kind of a given. But the things that when I look back on that journey, the things that I think took me through the most were giving myself grace and really accepting help and being flexible.
Absolutely. So let's take it one step further. How was the transition from medical school to residency?
Man, it's crazy. Everybody always asks that. We just had our interviews, all the fourth years that are applying asked that. And honestly, it's crazy. I don't think there's anything that you can really do to quote unquote prepare yourself. I think residency is difficult no matter what you go into, especially intern year. And, the things that you think that you will worry about or that you're concerned about, it's all this other stuff happens. It almost, you think oh, people gonna be calling me doctor, and that's so cool. I don't even remember the me being called doctor in the hospital, or me seeing my first patient or doing my first delivery. It was so overshadowed by all the other things, because it's a lot. You're managing personalities, you're managing the nurses, you're managing your co-residents, your seniors, your attendings, the patients. It's all this different stuff, in addition to you trying to figure out the logistics of things, how do I put in orders,
right?
Or what's the correct amount of medication that I can give this person, mm-hmm. Or you know what I mean, how do I do discharge summaries, or whatever. So there are all these logistic pieces, in addition to you actually trying to find time to increase your knowledge base. Residency is where you're learning how to do your job, and so there's a lot that goes into what the standards of your profession are, what the standards of care are, and what the literature shows, and how it is that you need to do what you need to do. So the transition, it's definitely a steep learning curve, and something that I used to tell, or I still tell a lot of me and my interns, is some days all you can do is commit to just coming back the next day and trying again.
Absolutely.
Like some days you gave it 100%, and this was all you had to give, and like it wasn't enough. And I mean, luckily you had seniors that were there, and like other people that were there that could pull you through. But some days, it is rough, and all you can do is just be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna just try to have a better day tomorrow. I'm gonna just try to learn from what I did today, and come back tomorrow and hopefully be better."
Absolutely. I love that. I love that mantra. Sometimes you just gotta commit to coming back and doing better the next day.
I mean, it was so many days. Like I was like, I don't know how I ended up back at this place. Like yesterday, I was saying, like, how am I? It's like something takes over your body. Like you just get up in the morning and it's dark outside and you're confused. You end up in the car and you just end up in the hospital. And you just like, let me look at these notes. Like let me try to do this thing. Because something that I think that people don't emphasize enough is that at one point or another, the gravity of what you're doing hits you.
Yeah.
The fact that you are writing people prescriptions, you are pre-oping people for surgery, you are giving people medication. You're doing things that are directly going to impact somebody's health.
Absolutely.
And there's a huge responsibility that comes with that, and there's a huge weight and pressure to do your job well, because what rides on that. Like you're moving, the biggest transition is you moving from learner, like not that you're not still learning, but you're a physician, and most places are day one, you have the pager. It's a very like trial by fire immersion kind of thing, and I don't care who you are, they're going to be, if there are 13 things you're supposed to do, 12 of them are going to be totally unfamiliar to you. What I mean? It just kind of like is what it is. And that's a tough transition. You got to like really give yourself a lot of grace through it, because it is tough.
Absolutely. Yeah. Grace. I think that's the word of the day. We're just giving ourselves grace. But, okay. So why did you choose medicine, first of all? And then why OB?
Ooh, medicine, I don't know. I didn't really have one of those, like, I did the mission trip. I didn't really, I always knew that I wanted to be a doctor. I, like, specifically a surgeon. I remember being, like, in elementary school, and I was watching, I think, like, Trauma Life in the ER with my cousin. That's, like, the earliest memory that I can, like, remember of me feeling have a way about anything medical. And we were watching Trauma Life in the ER, and there was this guy who had come in, and he'd been stabbed. He had like a butcher knife like through his head.
Right.
And I want to say his grandmother stabbed him, but he was like up and like talking. Like they showed the scan where you could see it, and they were just like trying to figure out what to do. And I remember just watching and being like, I don't know what they doing, but like I want to do that. Whatever I got to do what it is they doing, to like be in the room working that, like I want to do that. Like that was what I got out of that situation, And then OB, it's interesting because I did not initially want to do OBGYN. So this is why they make you rotate through everything third year. If I could have had my choice to skip any rotation third year, it would have been OBGYN. I said I wasn't pregnant. I ain't got nothing to do with folks that is pregnant. I don't even like kids like that. Like, I'm just be straight up. Like, I just didn't understand. Like, I didn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
And I took a leave. I was out for a little while, and when it was time for me to come back, like OB was the next thing that was scheduled for me to do anyway. And so they were like, "Yeah, we can just switch on the OB rotation." And I was just like, because by that point, my classmates had taken OB, and so I knew, I'd heard all the stories about it. Residents. I've been primed, right? And so I was just like, oh, this is like the worst. I gotta come back on this. This is terrible. Like, I was just so not looking forward to it. And I did it, and all these like little pieces just kind of started to click. Like, it was the one rotation, because me being interested in surgery, if you had asked me what makes a good patient, I would have told you an anesthetized patient. Like, I don't want to be in clinic. I want to be in OR.
Sasha.
I don't want to, like, I'm saying. And so I started noticing that OB, it was the only clinic that I didn't clock watching it constantly. You know what I'm saying? Where I wasn't constantly staring at the clock, like, when can I get out of here? you know. Yeah. Even when I was in clinic, you're still doing a lot of procedures, you know, like you can do STI testing, or you can do HSGs, or you can do endometrial samplings, or pap smear, or like whatever. And then, you know, it had surgeries, but the surgeries weren't typically super long, you know, because I liked operating, but I didn't like, you know, I didn't want to be in like 13, like I didn't want to be in hours and hours and hours. Right. So the surgeries, you know, typically weren't long, but they always, you know, you were always guaranteed to at least have some big surgery. Like certain stuff was never going to become minimally invasive. Like, nah, man, you got to have a C-section. Right. And it's, we getting in there. Like, and, you know, so it was always like you could do those big procedures. And so it just, I got a little bit of continuity of care. Like, I realized I really liked educating my patients. Like, I loved telling women, you know, educating them about their bodies and about the changes that occur during pregnancy and how, you know what I mean, like, miraculous that whole process, like, really is. Like, everything about your body changes to accommodate this. So it ended up just, like, working at all these levels. And then outside of just the technical aspect, I really was drawn to wanting to help in the areas that everybody are focusing on now when it comes to like maternal morbidity and mortality amongst Black women. Absolutely. And so it was something that I like, not only from like an education and like a technical aspect, but just that connection with being able to help my patients and like help my community. That was really important to me. So like all the pieces just kind of fit together.
Yeah. It's funny because I remember my first memory of meeting you in person, and it was a very brief meeting. It was January 2018 in July, actually, in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I remember at lunch we had that psychiatrist who gave us their lunch address, and she talked about finding that specialty that made your heart pitter patter. So would you say, Sasha, that OB makes your heart pitter patter?
It does. No pun intended. It does. I do really, you know, it's hard, but this is the only thing that I would do this for. Yeah. And I think that was probably a really great piece of advice that I got when I was like going through third year, like talking to attendants and hearing people talk about their specialties and kind of what to go into. You know, the more difficult it is, you have to have something else that drives you and keeps you going back. And so I had a lot of people say this, and I think it's true. Like if you know, whatever, if there's anything else that you would rather be doing, do that. Right. You know, because that's going to become an issue later with how difficult residency just can be. You know?
That's a great piece of advice. Okay, so next is how did you, and this is going back to kind of your time in medical school. Wait, where are we going?
I can grab my charger, but please, back to medical school. I'm right there with you, girl.
So going back to medical school, how did you establish Repertoire with your faculty members? And so you can answer that question as far as med school and as far as residency is concerned. Because I think, you know, sometimes as minority students, we have an issue, you know, establishing that repertoire on all levels, you know, and it's kind of, it's a skill that, you know, we start to develop in medical school and we kind of start to hone in and perfect in the professional world, you know, during residency. So tell us a little bit about your journey. I know it was different because, you know, you had an in as regional director, you know, but how is that trickling over into residency?
I think in medical school, I mean, you know, I went to medical school in my home state, and I had done a lot of programs as like a part of like applying. So like as far as you know, we have programs at the medical school for like middle schoolers and high schoolers and even college students that were interested in medicine, and so I was familiar with our Office of Diversity Affairs, and so there was a little bit of familiarity before I started. I didn't know anybody that I started with as far as like classmates or anything, but there was a little bit of familiarity with that, and then I think honestly just trying to find those people that support you and are willing to advocate for you as much as possible. I think sometimes even when you go to institutions where you may not feel that you have as much direct support, sometimes support is there, but you have to definitely be more intentional about seeking it out. Right. I think sometimes when we can be in situations where sometimes like we feel maybe more isolated or less supported, and so we engage less And it can be hard sometimes, like putting forth that extra effort to, you know, try to really like build those relationships and like utilize those. And it's important.
Right.
I think you just kind of have to be willing to sometimes take a little bit more initiative. And just be a little bit more intentional about it. In residency, it hasn't been quite as difficult because, you know, I'm at Morehouse, and so our program is historically and, you know, socially, it's very different than a lot of other places. And so I've had much more of an easier time doing that here. And I think it's important because this isn't the case everywhere. I think whether you're a pre-medical student that's choosing a medical school or you're a medical student who's choosing a residency program, go places where you, as much as you can tell that you're going to be supported, right? So, like, not just as a resident that they need to get their numbers or somebody that they need to, you know what I mean, like graduate or, you know what I'm saying, somebody that they're looking at, what's their match rate, like, excuse me, go somewhere where as much as possible they have a track record and you can see the vested interest in supporting their students and their learners. You know, when I was choosing a residency program, especially, you know, residency is hard. Medical school is hard. For all the pre-med students, medical school is hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're endeavoring on something that is difficult. And I'm saying that because it reminds me, there's this mountain in Little Rock, and you like go to climb, and it's like a local thing. Like, everybody's like, oh, you went to Pinnacle Mountain, like it's like a whole park, this whole thing. And I remember one day one of my friends was going to climb Pinnacle, and the very first thing on the outside of it says, you are about to climb a mountain. And I remember being like, that's stupid. Like, why would you say, clearly this is a mountain? That's dumb. And like halfway up the mountain, I remember thinking that, and I was like, who I'm climbing a mountain, Lord Jesus. And that's the same thing with medical school and with residency. Like, when people are saying this is difficult, it probably took somewhere between my second and third year of medical school, like right around STEP and kind of really advancing the clerkships, where I was like willing to openly say this is hard.
Yeah.
I don't think that's something that is easy for a lot of us to say. Like, we know that we're putting a lot of work in, and you know, but we're with so many of our backgrounds, in order to get to this level, we've had to excel and like do so well in so many things. I think sometimes we have a lot of trouble asking for help, or even just like admitting that like this is this is hard. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is very difficult. Not that it's, you know, it's the same level of difficulty throughout. Not that you don't, you know, have some good moments, but like overall, this is a very difficult undertaking. And you being somewhere where you feel that you can adequately like find support is critical. And, you know, just if nobody else told you, like, please say that your former regional director told you, because like that really totally shapes. It has the ability to shape your experience, like totally shape your experience.
I wholeheartedly agree. So speaking of support, the next question is, how did you go about finding that support network? So not just, you know, in your faculty members, but, you know, amongst classmates or in the community or physicians, whatever your support network looks like. How did you find that?
I think personally, I'm a real, I value myself on being honest and really genuine. And I think people respond to that. Yeah. And so I think if like I've needed help, or whenever I have, like, I've only seen positive things happen when I open myself up to people. And so I don't have a problem, you know, just talking to people like they're regular people. So, you know, if we're on a panel and, you know, there are other physicians and people in the community, stay afterwards, you know what I'm saying? Just talk to people, network. You know, a lot of times you're going to know, you know, these circles are so small, you're going to know similar people. Right. And so not being afraid to, you know, not always seeing such a hard and fast boundary between, for instance, yourself as a medical student and these other people as practicing professionals, or yourself as a resident and your, you know, attendings or other physicians. But being able to come on a professional level and just being your genuine self, right? That's been the thing that has helped me the most. Mm-hmm. Those are the times where I feel like I've made the most connections with people, because I think sometimes we don't really give it credit, but if you talk to people and if you're open, they'll be open and they'll talk back with you, right? And the more times that you do that, the less scary it becomes, and the more, like, case in point, even now as a resident, a lot of times there's kind of a subconscious vibe between the residents and the attendings.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit less severe, at Morehouse because we tend to have more of a family atmosphere.
Right.
But a lot of times there is like kind of that division. And for me, while I do have professional boundaries, I have no problem texting my associate program director. Like, hey, so I was watching this thing on Netflix. Have you seen the Bridgerton? You were watching Shondaland? I can just, you know what I mean? And she can just be like, Sasha, no, I don't watch that. But if you want to know what I watch is, and it's like you can just talk and like just be genuine.
Yeah.
Or like everybody knows that I bake cakes. Like that's my thing. I like to bake in general. I like to cook. So everybody knows that. So I'm always talking about the food I'm baking. And so one day I had made too much cake, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna bring some cake to work. And so I brought some cake for my attending. I brought some cake for the staff in the office. And she was like, my husband, later on she called me and was like, my husband ate that cake and said that he would pay you to make him another cake for Christmas. That cake was so good. And so I was like, no problem. Made her a cake, went and dropped it off at the house. Like some people would think that was weird. For me, that's me. Like that, I have no problem. Like I engage with people like people.
Right.
And it doesn't matter who you are. And that's like been the biggest like benefit to me, being able to like talk to anybody, like network with anybody, meet anybody, like practicing that skill is very important.
Yeah, you 100% are a very personable person. Like, girl.
I just talk. It's just me. It's just me. It's just us.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's great advice, though, because you're right. So often we do kind of, distinguish ourselves from people who are quote unquote above us, So like me as a medical student, do I feel like I can approach an attending and actually just have a conversation about real life? I should, but all too often medical students are, kind of intimidated to do that. But I think you're absolutely right with just putting yourself out there and networking and being personable. I think that's key, honestly.
Just be respectful, be able to read the room, you know what I mean? Like, and the more you do that, the better the practice is. Because at the end of the day, that's the whole, that's the whole point. If you're at a teaching institution, their job is to teach you, is to help you grow, is to instill things in you. Like, that's why they're faculty, or supposedly why they're faculty at that place. And so being able to not be afraid to use that. Like, that's part of the contract while y'all are there. You're a learner. You know what I mean? Like they're supposed to be a teacher. They're there to pour into you. So give them the opportunity within reason to do that.
Yeah. All right, Sasha, last question is, and you probably saw this one coming. If you could go back to your pre-health professional years, your pre-med years, what advice would you give yourself?
Stay away from Stevenson Center. Stevenson Center, so I was in college at Vanderbilt. Stevenson Center was like where all the little science and math classes were. And people used to be like, Stevenson Center is where GPAs go to die. Because it was just so sad. Like, that's what all the hard science and math classes were.
Okay, but seriously.
It was just so bad. Like, all the freshmen come in pre-med and they're like, oh, I'm going to take calculus, I'm going to take chemistry, and I'm going to take my foreign language, and I'm going to get my English out the way. And then halfway through the year, you're like, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't know why I did that. That was, whoever gave me that advice, that was horrible. I ain't never listened to that person again.
Honestly, though, like, those entrance advisors who advise you on your first schedule, I don't know what they be doing because they did the same thing to me. I'm just like, why am I taking this many credit hours at one time as a freshman? But
oh my God, I never. Yeah, if I could go back, I would definitely tell myself not to listen to any of that. But honestly, probably the biggest thing that I would tell myself wouldn't even. I mean, obviously, like protecting my GPA would have probably been something that I would have focused a lot more on, and just. But I think more than anything, I would have. The advice that I would give to my younger self wouldn't be anything academic. It would just be more about like personal development, because that's honestly the thing that matters the most to me, like as an individual. So it's like, yes, there's Sasha Ray, the physician, the PGY1, OBGYN resident, but that is like something like this job is something that I do.
Right.
And I've like I'm a big advocate for mental health. It's something that I always try to make clear is that this job is not all that I am.
Right.
there are other parts of my personality that need just as much nurturing and just as much feeding as the professional part.
Absolutely.
And so probably the thing that I would say that would be the most important to my younger self would be more maintaining that sort of balance. It would be being more fearless. It would be being more reflective and really probably just pouring into myself more. Focusing more on my like self-discipline. Like those would be the things that and of course those things are going to bleed over professionally, and probably positively too. But it probably I don't think it would be anything academic. I think it would be take more chances. I think it would be dream bigger. I think it would be more fearless. I think it would be definitely work harder. But it would be all things that were intrinsic to like me being a better person versus like any individual external like academic or anything like that.
Yeah. I think that's a great topic that you touched on, just the separation between, who I am as a student versus who I am as a person, who I am as a physician versus who I am as, just Sasha. Like all too often, we kind of get those things intertwined and we start to just place our personal value and our performance in those realms, like how we perform in school and how we perform at work. And, that obviously doesn't lend well when you're in such a rigorous environment where, one day you're up on a high, the next day you're at the lowest of lows, So I really love that. I do. I love that just idea of just separating, who you are from what you do. You're still passionate about it, but you're taking better care of yourself.
Exactly. I realized that a lot of my, like episodes whenever I was depressed, whether it was in college or in medical school, I think had a lot to do just with just that change in like my self-perception and like my image. So I went from being, the student that made A's all the time, the student that did really well at everything, the student that never had to try very hard, to being somebody that was trying and still was like, I don't understand why. Like I ain't never put this much effort into anything, and I'm, you know what I mean. And it's still not working out, and to never have had that happen, and so when that is your primary identifier, the primary way that you see value in yourself, and that's eroded, or that's challenged in any way, and you've never been challenged in that way before, it can be difficult for you to kind of figure out, like, okay, who else am I? What other things about myself do I value? What other things about me, do I care about, or, do I have to contribute? And so, like you said, no, definitely not to say that you don't still care about your job, you're not still passionate, you don't still work hard, or you don't still, but I do think that it's important to be able to separate. Like you have to have times where you're able to turn it off, and you have to have times where you're able to focus on other things.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Sasha, is there anything else that you want to leave with our MAPS members of Region 3?
I don't know. Like, any last words? I don't know. I guess I would just say to y'all what I would say to my younger self. Like, be more fearless, really aim higher. And if it's the thing that I always tell people whenever they're asking, particularly if they're applying to medical school, residency too, but I feel like oftentimes you have a little bit more support applying into residency. But the biggest thing that I think I always tell students is you can do it, but it's going to take everything you have to give.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to like kind of make that commitment to it, you know what I'm saying? Then like you might need to, have a come to Jesus meeting, and until you're really ready to get to that point.
Absolutely.
Because I don't know anybody that just like sailed through medical school.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't know anybody that just like sailed through residency.
Yeah.
Some people definitely do it better. Some people may have more support, or people have different backgrounds.
Right.
But at some point, whether it's school or work or professionally, personally, at some point you're going to have a challenge, and it's important for you to, be able to weather those storms because they happen. And so if you're not willing to say, no, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm going to be focused on, and this is what I'm willing to do to make this work, I would really meditate on that until you're ready to get to that place, because that's what it takes. Like it doesn't, it doesn't accept anything less in order for you to do this and do this well.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. Well, thank you so much, Sasha, for joining us for this month's specialty interview. I really appreciate you taking the time out. I know you are super busy, and just finished an exam, so by all means, please go take a nap, decompress. But
that's something to tell them. You're going to keep taking tests. How about
tests
that?
never end. Tests never end. You thought the MCAT was the end of it? No. Mm-mm. No.
No. God. So, yeah, don't forget that too.
All right. We will keep that in mind. But again, thank you so much, Sasha. We really appreciate you taking the time out. You're amazing as always. You look great. We miss you. And just continue to flourish and make us proud, man. You're doing it. And we love that for you.
I do like it. I can't wait till I can see everyone in person again once Corona is, something that we know more how to deal with. So, just good luck to everyone. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or other members in the region. That's what we're here for. That's what SNMA is all about. And don't forget to register for the national conference.
Yeah, registration is now open, and early bird ends on January 31st. So y'all go ahead and hop on that. And I will make sure that we leave Sasha's email address in the newsletter, and y'all can contact her if y'all have any particular questions since she offered. So yeah, hit her up and tune into the next video because we've got videos on mental health. We've got videos on diversity and inclusion from your pre-medical members on the MATS committee. We've got a video on leadership in medicine, and we've also got a video on resilience in medicine. So we've got plenty for you this month. This was just the beginning, and it was a great start. Thank you again, Sasha, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye.